Don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, you're too arrogant. And if you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power.
Otap, this is Femi here with Freedom Now, and your ears are in tuned at high frequencies in a liberated zone. Freedom Now is a Pan-Africanist, global news outlet from coast to coast, dispelling the Western propaganda media and their all lies point of views. Freedom Now is devoted to relay true news, views, and proper clues to form solutions around freedom for the oppressed worldwide. Now, get relaxed, grab a pen, and phone a friend, because Freedom Now is set to begin to awaken deep sleepers dreaming about freedom now, within, in Freedom Now.
Habari Gani. This is Sister Thage with Freedom Now's agenda for this Saturday, May 18, 2024. We commence with our sister, Luyanda Kuboka, and the African Drumbeat Historical Calendar. This hour, we're joined first by Dr. Matsemela Odom, President of the International Democratic Uhuru Movement and Assistant Professor of Black Studies at San Diego Mesa College, here to discuss Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party's upcoming visit to Southern California here in Los Angeles and in San Diego, May 23rd through the 25th. Come out in support. Dr. Odom joins us to also discuss their case of the Uhuru Three, as 3 members of the Uhuru movement were recently indicted on bogus charges related to operating as registered foreign agents, which is a huge implication for free speech everywhere. And later this hour, we're joined by our sister, Dr. Melina Abdullah, the vice presidential running mate for presidential candidate Dr. Cornel West under the Justice for All Party. Make sure to register and vote for this upcoming November presidential election. Dr. Melina Abdullah is also local community activist with Black Lives Matter Grassroots and professor of Pan-African Studies at Cal State LA. Dr. Abdullah is currently suing the Los Angeles Police Department for their harassment and targeting of her home and children by swatting their home 3 times. And if you're available on Monday, May 20th and early next week, please join us in the court for court support by showing up downtown Los Angeles at the Stanley Moss Courthouse, the 3rd floor, Department 28. You can go to tinyurl.com/Abdullah versus LAPD. That's tinyurl.com/capital A, lowercase BDULLAH, capital V, lowercase s, capitalized LAPD. Again, tinyurl.com/Abdullah versus LAPD. Our music clip mix includes MLK, Zap Mama, Dennis Brown, Prince, Dead Prez, Childish Gambino, and prison radio commentaries and more. So sit back, phone a friend, and as always, we stand ready for revolution.
We would like to appreciate any constructive criticism, positive or negative. So please contact us at Freedom Now at KPFK. This is a labor of love and commitment. We are not paid, so any feedback helps instill in us the momentum to continue. Did you know that for every 1 hour of on-air broadcast, it takes about 8 to 10 hours of studio pre-production? Well, we will continue because, as always, we stand ready for the revolution.
Forward ever, backwards never. This is Sister Luyanda Koboka with Freedom Now's African Drumbeat Historical Calendar for the week of May 16th. This presentation is to keep the memories of our revolutionary ancestors and positive actions alive in the hearts and souls of our people, to inspire us to greater accomplishments. May 16th, 1966, Stokely Carmichael Kwame Ture becomes the chairman of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. SNCC, the foremost grassroots organizing effort led by students for the destruction of the de facto segregation and the empowerment of African sharecroppers in the Black Belt South. Stokely's rise heralded the rise of Black power as a major ideological stepping stone towards Pan-Africanism. May 16, 1865, Susan Lafeche Picot was born, an Omaha Paiute, the first Native woman contemporary doctor who gave care to all patients without discrimination and banned the sale and consumption of alcohol. She was a lecturer and organizer who drew the links between the European slaughter of the Plains buffalo and the destruction of the Native American culture. May 17, 1582, Queen Zinga was born. She was the warrior queen of the Congo and Ndongo, who resisted Portuguese domination of her people. She is considered one of the most remarkable global women of the century. She led resistance against European colonialization for over 50 years. She united the Ndongo, Matamba, Congo, Kasji, Dembos, Kisma, and Central Planalto kingdoms into a Pan-African empire to strengthen African resistance. She declared that all slaves who reach her empire would be free. May 17, 1954, the United States Supreme Court outlaws school segregation in Brown versus the Board of Education, thereby injecting African students into Eurocentric schools, advancing the process of Europeanization of African people. May 18, 1803, Catherine Flon removed the white cloth from the Haitian national flag and sewed in blue and red cloths together to symbolize the unity of blacks and mulattoes, thereby providing a united force against the French. May 18, 1950, Brazilian National Council of Black Women founded by Maria Nascimento. Brazil has the largest population of African people in the Western Hemisphere. May 19, 1874, Inessa Armand was born. She was one of the most important women in the Russian Revolution. She was the president of the Moscow Society for improving the lot of women fighting the Tsarist feudal regime. She was imprisoned and became a major propagandist in the first modern socialist revolution in the world, who with Lenin and the party built a new social order where the working class became the dominant ruling class. She served as the first director of the women's section in the Central Committee of the Communist Party. May 19th, 1925, Alhaj Malik Shabazz, also known as Malcolm X, was born. Malcolm X rose from the shattering experience of his father's death by the Ku Klux Klan, then street hustler, and then became the national spokesperson for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and evolved into a Pan-Africanist guided by the revolutionary leadership of Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Toure, and Julius Nyerere. Malcolm X stated that you cannot understand the struggle in Mississippi until you understand the struggle in the Congo, for we have the same enemy. May 20th, 1973. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Sequel El Hamra and Rio Oro, or Polisario, founded to fight for the independence of the Western Sahara in Africa from Spanish colonialism and Moroccan neo-colonialism. This has been Freedom Now on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in Santa Barbara, where every week is Black History Week. Please, for any comments or contributions, email us at freedomnow@kpfk.org. We will close with a unity freedom chant of Amandla, and you respond Awetu. Join us wherever you are for the symbolic show of unity. Amandla!
Awetu.
Amandla!
Awetu.
Amandla!
Awetu.
Have the emergence in human society of this thing that's called the state. What is the state? The state is this organized bureaucracy. It is the police department. It is the Army, the Navy. It is the prison system, the courts, and what have you. This is the state. It is a repressive organization. But the state, and well, you know, you've got to have the police, because if there were no police, look at what you'd be doing to yourselves. You'd be killing each other if there were no police. But the reality is, the police become necessary in human society only at that juncture in human society where it is split between those who have and those who ain't got.
I throw a Molotov cocktail at the precinct. You know how we think. Organize the hood under our Ching banners. Red, black, and green instead of gang bandanas. FBI spying on us through the radio antennas. And I'm hitting cameras in the street like watching society. With no respect for the people's right to privacy. I take a slug for the cause like Huey P. While all you fake niggas try to copy Master P. I wanna be free to live, able to have what I need to live. Bring the power back to the street where the people live. We sick of working for crumbs and filling up the prisons. Dying over money and relying on religion for help. We do for self like ants in a colony.
This is Sister Thage with Freedom Now, and we're honored to be joined by Dr. Matsemela Odom, President of the International Democratic Uhuru Movement and Assistant Professor of Black Studies at San Diego Mesa College. Welcome to Freedom Now, Dr. Matsemela Odom.
Uhuru, yes. Dr. Matsemela Odom, International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. And thank you for having me here.
Yes, thank you for joining us, and especially to discuss Chairman Omali Yeshitela's upcoming visit to Southern California. And so can you talk to our listeners about some of those details?
Yes, I'm very excited to tell you all about Chairman Omali Yeshitela's visit to Southern California. In fact, his last visit to Southern California concluded on October 6th, 2023, Friday, October 6th, 2023, with an amazing anti-colonial event in San Diego, California, where African people, indigenous people, white radicals, and Arab people all showed up. And then the next morning, we know that things changed, October 7th. So Chairman Omali Yeshitela makes another visit to Southern California in less than 8 months as a part of the Uhuru 3 Southern California tour, in which he'll be holding 3 different events around the question of reparations and African Liberation Day. On Thursday, May 23rd, 2024, Chairman Omali Yeshitela will be at the District 9 Council Office, 4301 South Central Avenue in Los Angeles, speaking alongside members, the other 2 members of the Uhuru 3, Penny Hess and Jesse Neville. On Friday, May 24th, he'll be in San Diego for a book event and dinner at the Red Sea Ethiopian restaurant at 4717 University Avenue. And then on Saturday, May 25th, which is African Liberation Day, we'll be at the World Beat Center for a huge event. You won't want to miss it, at the World Beat Cultural Center in San Diego, California at 2100 Park Boulevard. And like I said, in Balboa Park, San Diego. So this is going to be a very, very exciting week of events. So yeah.
So thank you for that. And you had mentioned the Uhuru 3. And so can you talk to our listeners about the Uhuru 3 case and the government's prosecution?
Yes. The Uhuru 3 are Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, Chairwoman Penny Hess. She's the chairperson of the African People's Solidarity Committee, an organization formed underneath the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party in 1976 for the purpose of taking the fight for African liberation into the white communities of North America and winning reparations that can service the liberation of African people. And she and APSC has been doing that since 1976. And Jesse Neville, who's the chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, basically a mass organization of white people who take the struggle for Black power into the white communities in much of the same way as we just talked about. Chairman Melina has a near 60-year history of fighting for African liberation from the time of from his time as a civil rights worker, including forming of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee chapter in St. Petersburg, Florida, to subsequent Black Power organizations, which concluded with the formation of the African People's Socialist Party in 1972. Now, Chairman and the rest of the decades worth of fighting for the liberation of African people, fighting for reparations, fighting to bring charge of genocide against the United States government for its treatment of African people. Now, what we see in this case is that the United States and the FBI wants everyone to believe that wants everyone to forget that almost 60-year history of Africans fighting for self-determination and 1982, Chairman Melina held the first World Tribunal for Reparations to African people in the United States in Brooklyn, New York. They want, ever since 1969, the Burning Spear newspaper has been talking about reparations, has been talking about the crime of genocide against African people. But the United States wants us to forget all that and make us think that Russians told Chairman Melina and the rest of the Uhuru Three to do what they do. So they're being charged with conspiracy to commit an offense against the United States, acting as agent of a foreign government and foreign officials, to wit, the Russian Federation, in violation of 18 USC 951A, with a maximum prison sentence of up to 15 years in prison if they are convicted. So yeah, and these indictments came down, it was last year, May of 2023, 9 months after the Uhuru movement was violently attacked in a multi-city set of raids, which include drones, armored vehicles, automatic weapons, flashbang grenades, and things like that from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The trial is set for September 3rd, 2024 in Tampa, Florida, the federal courthouse over in Tampa, Florida. But yeah, that's the Uhuru Three, the campaign that they have. The campaign in defense of the Uhuru Three is called the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa, a counter-offensive campaign.
And do you want to go into a deeper history of what is the African People's Socialist Party for our listeners?
Yes, so that's excellent. So the African People's Socialist Party is a vanguard African liberation organization formed African Liberation Day, May 25th, 1972 in St. Petersburg, Florida. It was formed through the merger of three different Black Power organizations, one that was headed by Chairman Melina and created in 1968 called the Junta of Militant Organizations, JOMO, headquartered in St. Petersburg, Florida. Another organization that organized migrant workers called the Black Rights Fighters. They were headquartered in Fort Myers, Florida. And then an organization of Black radical students and intellectuals out of University of Florida called the Black Study Group. So all three of those organizations came together and formed the African People's Socialist Party, African Liberation Day, 1972. May 25th, 1972. The African People's Socialist Party is guided by the principles of African internationalism, African internationalism is an anti-colonial worldview, which says that the colonial capitalist social system came of age through the brutal assault on Africa, the enslavement and colonization of Africa and other colonized people of the world, and that it will be overturned through the rising up and the unity of African and other colonized people around the world. African People's Socialist Party has 50 plus economic and political institutions around the world. We're headquartered right now in St. Louis, Missouri, where we have a variety of different, like I said, campaigns to really bring Africans back to political life. But we're an international organization. We are located in no less than 3 different continents, actually 4 different continents. We have members in Asia, Africa, the Americas, and Europe. So that's the African People's Socialist Party, and our chairman is Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Collectively, all the organizations headed by the African People's Socialist Party are referred to as the Uhuru movement, but the African People's Socialist Party is the head of the Uhuru movement.
And we just wanted to remind our listening audience that we are speaking with Dr. Matsemela Odom, president of the International Democratic Uhuru Movement. And so as we thank you for doing this work, can you also let our listeners know about the International Democratic Uhuru Movement?
So I'm the president of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. It's a mass organization underneath the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party for the purpose of fighting for and defending the democratic rights of the African community. We were formed in 1991 in Chicago, Illinois. First president of our organization was actually the widow of Fred Hampton. Her name is Akua and Jerry. So much of our work is done, political work is done through much of our mass organizations. One of the most important organizations that we have formed recently as a part of this fight back is the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition, a non-sectarian anti-colonial free speech coalition to make the demand to drop the charges against the Uhuru 3 and to defend the right to freedom of speech. And we say anti-colonial free speech. It was founded July 8th, 2023, and embraces the struggles for self-determination, liberation, and freedom of speech of African, indigenous, and other oppressed peoples and voices around the world. So yeah, and if people want to learn more about that stuff, they can attend the Southern California Uhuru 3 tour coming up next week, beginning in Los Angeles and concluding in San Diego, beginning Thursday, May 23rd in Los Angeles and concluding Saturday, May 25th in San Diego.
And is this information posted online anywhere?
Yes, to find out about the tour, they can go to Uhuru 3 Tour, that's UHURU 3, the number 3, tour, TOUR.eventbrite.com. But to learn more about the Hands Off Uhuru campaign, you can go to handsoffuhuru.org, handsoffuhuru.org. To learn more about these events coming up next week, as well as all other Hands Off Uhuru events, you can go to the Hands Off Uhuru events page at handsoffuhuru.org/events.
Well, we wanted to thank you, Dr. Matsemela Odom, president of the International Democratic Uhuru Movement. And so thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on Freedom Now.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now for our prison radio commentaries.
Racism Dies with Capitalism by Kevin Rashid Johnson. Race is an invention, a social prison of artificial division. The oppressed separated into ranks that race for first place in a caste system based on the color of one's face, created by those in power under capitalism, so that our focus might be diverted from them to us when they are the common foe, but we don't know, because through their systems of control and influence, they show an inverted reality, a confluence of images that portray them as heroes of elevated validity. But the workers and poor as mats on the floor to be trampled across the globe, sapped of our roads as the producers of all that make societies flow. So where do we go? What must we do? To take control, we must unite as a whole to overthrow capitalism, the source of division and polarization upon all bases such as nation and racism, gender and sexual orientation, whatever serves to divide workers and those who must ride allied on the basis of class oppression. On the workers' side, a divide, often difficult to grasp by the victims of this system, so the struggle must be led with precision by a party of comrades united and driven by a working class vision of liberation to dismantle all divisions. Then we can all enjoy the highest quality of living, which is communism.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
Prison Radio, how y'all doing out there today? This is Abdullah, a.k.a. Cornel Kelly, the Black Sheep. I just transferred over here from Chuckawalla to Ironwood State Prison, Facility C, new non-designated level 2 program. One of the things I wanted to tap in today on is the difficulties that a lot of us are facing in coming over here, and particularly, African Americans, more or less, right? One of the things is that, the housing criteria, you got a lot of officers here that doesn't want this change to take place, or they're going a new direction that the Department of the State of California is going with the Norway idea. They believe as though it's taking jobs away from them. And that prison should be more violent, or prison should be more adverse, because it keeps jobs, or it keeps them with the idea of selling the union's party line that we need these jobs because prisons are dangerous, or they got more write-ups, whatever it may be. And that's one of the things that we find ourselves, dealing with today. There has been a plethora of 115s or rule violation reports given for frivolous issues that you would normally give, and particularly like integrating housing. Right. One of the concepts of non-designated program is to integrate S&Y inmates, or those with security needs, with general population inmates. And the only individuals that are coming to these programs are African Americans. Hispanics or whites are not coming to these programs in droves like the African Americans are. So now the department has flipped the idea of the notion of what they mean integrating. So they're now saying that integrating means that I should be willing to house with a white, or house with a black. Or Hispanic, right? So that may be fine and dandy for some individuals, but for some like myself, who's been locked up 37 years, right, that creates a problem, because dealing with the years of racial violence, dealing with the years of conflict that has come as a result of the racial tension, I suffer from a lot of units called PTSD, and you should be aware of. So, me going in the cell with a Hispanic would have created more conflict or more violence on my part, and would have made it more difficult for me to get home than saying, just let me just refuse the cellie. So once I refuse the cellie, now I'm getting an RBR for refusing housing, right? So now they don't apply their own policy, rules, and procedures, when it comes to this. So this is one of the things that we find ourselves going through. Then we have a lack of program. We have a constant lack of program, where we're supposed to be in an institution or environment where we have more programming, because we have, put ourselves in a position to earn this. We earn this right. So now, you're saying that, okay, well, since we're in the transition, we work with us, this now. Why are we working with you when this is supposed to be something that's already across the board throughout the state? Donovan is not having this problem. Mill Creek is not having this problem. Pelican Bay is not having this problem. St. Quentin is not having this problem. Why is Ironwood having this problem? So that's one of the things, talk about the transition and the frustration that it brings within the population as we try to evolve and try to turn this into a positive program to where that we all benefiting from the various groups and things like that that's going to help us get home and closer to our loved ones, in a short amount of time. When you constantly issuing rule violation reports, you're building the frustration level. You're building the disconnect between, the administration and the population. We just did an Ironman contest, which was a success, and I'm giving, Coach Martin, the Chief Deputy Warden, proving it, Captain Lopez being behind us and stuff like that. So I'm not saying that all staff, now let me correct myself. I'm not saying that all staff, are against us. I'm saying there's a body, there's a thought process that is against us. But there's also those that are there for us, that want us to achieve, that want us to be successful. And I got to give kudos to those that are doing so. As I said, Coach Martin, Captain Lopez, Chief Deputy Warden, you know what I mean, and the Warden himself, Holbrook, because they all have to sign off on these particular programs. So there's those that are within the program that are there for us. Right, so now we got saying we have a bingo and Juneteenth lined up coming up. You know what I mean? So it's things that we're doing, you know what I mean, to try to make do with the situation what we're dealing with. However, the transition is a frustrating one. So that's what I wanted to share, you know what I mean, with the world out there, Prison Radio. I thank you for the opportunity again. My name is Bernell Kelly, you know what I mean, E04304. If you want to get in contact or you want to share your thoughts with me, I'm open to that. You can check me out on the podcast, on us, on YouTube, on us on Spotify. And with that, as always, I leave as I came, and I appreciate the opportunity.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
This is Sister Flora, and you are listening to Freedom Now at KPFK 90.7 FM in occupied Mexico, including Los Angeles, 98.7 FM Santa Barbara, 93.7 FM in San Diego, and streaming live on the web at kpfk.org. Today's program, as well as 10 prior editions, can be reheard at kpfk.org/audio archive, and scroll down to Freedom Now. From 12 to 1 p.m., following Freedom Now is your sister Assunta, with Spotlight Africa addressing issues facing Mother Africa. For a truly alternative international perspective on world affairs, check out RTTV Russia, CCTV China, and online at Presna, Latina Cuba Telesur Venezuela, News 24 South Africa, and Press TV Iran.
This is Sister Thage with Freedom Now, and we're so honored to be joined back here on Freedom Now by our sister, Dr. Melina Abdullah. She's the proud mama of Tandiwe, Amara, and Amen, professor of Pan-African Studies at Cal State LA, where she also led the ethnic studies fight for students. She's a leader of Black Lives Matter grassroots with her tireless work fighting police murder and terror of Black people. And she's also KPFK host of Move the Crowd. And she joins us here today as the vice presidential running mate for presidential candidate Dr. Cornel West under the Peace and Freedom Party. Welcome back to Freedom Now.
Thanks so much for having me, Sister Tage. And, just a quick addendum. I am on leave as host of Move the Crowd because of FCC rules. I can't host the show while I'm on while I'm running for office with Dr. West. So I'm not hosting right now, but our fearless and brilliant Tyler Boudreau is hosting the show, and I'm still part of the Move the Crowd team and look forward to being back when either we win and I'm actually vice president, or the campaign is over and we win differently by raising really, really important issues. Also, we're fighting for ballot access in California. So we are not the Peace and Freedom Party candidates. We have launched a new political party called the Justice for All Party. So for voters in California to vote for us, to get us on the ballot in November, we're going to actually need folks to re-register and to vote or to register under other and then type in Justice for All Party. We need 73,000 people to do that to get us on the ballot in California, and that has to be done by July. And so that's a big lift, but we know that it's not insurmountable. We know that many, many people understand Trump to be the absolute devil, and also know that Joe Biden just approved another $1 billion in arms for Israel, So he is funding and fueling genocide. And so we know people are looking for someone to vote for, not just vote against, and hope to earn their vote. And even if they don't know if they're going to vote for us or not, help us to get on the ballot in California by re-registering under our new political party, the Justice for All Party.
Thank you so much for that, because now I need to re-register myself. And yes, special shout out to Tyler Boudreau, definitely tuning in Monday mornings at 7 a.m. here on KPFK. And so also, you of many close people definitely know how radical our program is. And you have years of activism and organizing history with our spiritual backbone here at Freedom Now, our ancestor Didan Kamati. And so in that spirit, can you talk to our Freedom Now listening audience about why you're running your platform tied to any Pan-African history, deeper Black American history, however you want to lay out those deeper foundations for our listening audience? Please tell us why you're running.
Sure. Well, we know that, number one, no oppressed people have ever voted themselves into freedom, right? But we also know that electoral justice is one part of our freedom struggle. So we're encouraging people to vote. That's a way to pay honor to Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, to our own grandmothers and grandfathers. And so we think that the electoral process is something important to engage in, but we can't limit our efforts to only voting. So I want to be very clear about that. And then in the spirit of who you mentioned, and really the force behind Freedom Now, really a vital force behind my own activism, the activism of my children, and anybody who searches for freedom in the Americas and in Los Angeles in particular. You know, Didan Kamati is always someone that we lift up. He was a dear brother to me. He's how we connected, right? He's how I connected with many in the organizing community. And one of the things that we learned from him is that we have to organize on many, many fronts. So I remember when I was a fairly young professor. No, I was a really young professor at Cal State LA. And I was doing work around radical education of our students in Pan-African Studies at Cal State LA. And Didan and I would say, you get them on campus and I'll get them off campus, right? And, you know, of course, those spaces bled into each other, right? I wasn't only on campus, but the students who came, I could expose them to what is Pan-Africanism. Who were people like Kwame Ture? What kinds of organizing legacies do we want to inherit? And then they could actually do that work in community that I would be a part of, but also Didan helped to really ground them in. And so this is kind of part of what we are doing with this campaign, is saying that there's organizing that has to happen on many fronts. So I'm also reminded of the words of the first Black woman to ever run for vice president. Her name is Charlotta Bass, and she's from Los Angeles. And she ran in 1952 on the Progressive Party ticket. And she said, win or lose, we win by raising the issues. And it's that second part, we win by raising the issues, that's really, really foundational to my decision to accept the invitation of Dr. Cornel West to run for vice president. That, you know, I thought I was going to be a really enthusiastic supporter of Dr. West. I've been a follower of his work for decades. You know, he influenced my intellectual work, but also I got to watch the way that he, with extreme humility, would put his body out for the things that he said he believed in, right? And so when he announced his presidential bid, I was inspired and felt like, now I have someone to vote for, right? I believe in him. I believe in his brilliance, but I also believe in his spirit and his heart. And so as he was running, I just felt very, very fortunate to be in his orbit, to be able to introduce him from time to time, to get to interview him. And then I got a call from him and his wife one day, and I thought it was to follow up on an interview. But they kind of paused, and they don't usually pause. You know, if anybody's heard Dr. West, he's never at a loss for words or short on words. But there was this pause, and then they asked, and they said, would you be his running mate? And my heart immediately said yes. My spirit leapt out of my body. I wanted to cry out yes immediately, and I told them so. And then I said, you know, and I also have children, and I also have a mama, and I also have an organizing community, so I got to check with them. And once I got everybody's okay, we decided, okay, that this is a massive platform for us to be able to advance ideals that are different than what the corporate-owned Democratic Party, the corporate-owned Republican Party are advancing. We get to talk about why we shouldn't be spending 62 cents out of every dollar on military, on war, which is what this country is doing right now. We get to talk about how for less than 10% of that, we could house everyone in this country. We get to speak in terms of not just healthcare for all. And I'm sad to say that bill died today in California, right? Of course, people deserve universal healthcare, but also what does healthcare justice, bigger than healthcare for all, what does healthcare justice look like? What does maternal health look like? What does reparations look like real reparations with a check and all those other things? And so these are the things that we get to talk about on a massive stage in front of many, many folks, and do it differently than I think any other candidate before Dr. West and I have been able to, because we see this as, you know, two names allowed on the ballot, but really as the people's campaign. And we're building out our policy pillars absolutely in partnership with people who we love, respect, and who have, you know, invested their lives in the freedom of our people.
Right on. And what states are you working to be on the ballot for?
So we're currently on the ballot right now in 6 states. We expect that to double in the next week or two. So that's really exciting. We're on the ballot in Alaska and South Carolina and Colorado and Utah, like places I never thought we'd be on the ballot. We're fighting to get on the ballot for ballot access in states like Georgia and New York and California. And then there'll be some states where, you know, we're going to fight for ballot access, but we're also making sure that we register as write-in candidates. So, for instance, there are states that are meant to lock out independent candidates and third-party candidates. If you think about states like Texas and Florida, which make the bar really, really high. You have to have hundreds of thousands of signatures to even be placed on the ballot, which means if you don't have millions of dollars to hire paid signature gatherers, it's an impossibility or a near impossibility. So we're going to still try, because Dr. West always says anything can happen. But there'll be a few states where we'll have to be write-in candidates. But we intend for people to be able to vote for us in all 50 states. Every single state, people will be able to vote for us, whether it be because we're on the ballot with a third party. So for instance, in South Carolina, we're on the ballot already with a third party, or whether we're on with our own political party as the Justice for All Party, or whether they have to write us in, as will likely be the case in Florida and Texas.
Right on. And are you looking forward to participating in any debates?
So the Democrats and the Republicans have already declared that they refuse to debate third-party candidates. You know, that's okay. They don't have to. It's sad and telling though, right? Like, what are they afraid of? Why are they afraid of these ideas? Why are they afraid of being challenged? I think they don't want, you know, our platform is truth, justice, and love. They don't want to talk about truth, justice, and love. They don't want the cover snatched back. They don't want to talk about AIPAC donations. They don't want to talk about corporate ownership of the political party. So I doubt that the Democrats or Republicans will change their mind and choose to debate us. That said, there's other ways of doing things, right? We could have smaller party debates or independent debates, and we can also just have conversations about ideas. And that's something that we've been doing for the last month or so, is having open conversations, open dialogue about our policy pillars with really, really brilliant people. So for instance, we just had an alternatives to police conversation with brilliant leaders like Kiana Jones, Reverend Kiana Jones, who's leading some of the Stop Cop City work in Atlanta, with lots of different practitioners and spiritual leaders. Dr. Stanley Talbert helped to facilitate that conversation. And then, of course, there is Dr. Tama Bryant, who is the former president of the American Psychological Association, who really helped us to understand, for instance, why police don't belong in mental health calls. So we've been having really rich conversations. We're going to have conversations on everything from alternatives to police. Next up, I think we have our healthcare justice conversation. And these kinds of dialogues allow the people into the conversation rather than the traditional debate structure, which says, here's the people on stage and everybody else be quiet.
Wow. And so, wow, that was a lot. Right. So I wanted to ask you then, going off of that, as a Muslim woman, running in this position, and also we know recently the student Asna Tabassum, the valedictorian at USC, was also silenced, and this ongoing silence of the Muslim community. Can you kind of talk about your role in this candidacy as a Muslim woman, some of the things that you're facing that you wanted to talk about?
Sure. Well, I feel extremely honored and humbled to be the first Muslim woman to be on the ticket. And I didn't fully realize it until after I accepted the nomination. I didn't realize that was the case or what that would mean. But again, I feel very honored and humbled. And I think that there's no better time than now for this, right? One of the 99 names of Allah is justice. And I view my position as being one, as my name Abdullah means humble servant of God. To be able to humbly serve Allah, to be able to humbly serve God, to be able to humbly serve our Creator, to be able to humbly honor our ancestors and honor our people by advancing things in a righteous and just way. I think now is really, really important. As you lifted up, Sister Tej, the Muslim community is being both silenced but also demonized. And when we look at what happened with Asna Tabassum, with her literally being muzzled, right, with them canceling, USC deciding to cancel an entire graduation because they were fearful of a 4-minute speech by this beautiful, brilliant young Muslim woman who is speaking up for rights, as a minor in resistance to genocide, right? We have to lift our voices. And, Allah says that we have to speak up against injustice and for justice constantly. And the way that we do it most righteously is with our hands. And when we can't fight with our hands, we fight with our voices. And when we can't fight with our voices, we fight in our heart. And so I intend to do all of those things as a vice presidential candidate, and feel very, very fortunate to be running alongside, running with a presidential candidate who also believes in those things in his own radical Christian tradition.
Right on. And as you speak of justice, and we get ready to wrap up here, I did want to mention to our listening audience, and wanted to ask you to speak to this also, that you're in a court case right now with your fight against the LAPD for having swatted you 3 times, and with your children present, facing or pointing weapons at you. Can you kind of talk about what is happening with what you're allowed to say, what you want our listeners to know?
Sure. So I'm currently in the midst of a trial against LAPD, which, as we know, is the most murderous police department in the entire nation. Sister Tage, you know, and we've been a part of it together, attempting to hold LAPD accountable. We've been at police commission meetings on Tuesdays, which is supposed to be the oversight body that holds them accountable, which they don't. In fact, just a quick aside, one of the people who called the shots at USC about silencing Asna Tabassum and calling in LAPD on their own students, violently arresting them. His name is Errol Southers. He is an Israeli occupation forces trained federal agent who is also the president of the police commission. So it's really important that we share that, because it's important to understand that all of these injustices in the world are tied together, that the occupation of Palestine is tied with, murderous police force that includes LAPD. So in August of 2020, at the height of Black Lives Matter uprisings, especially here in Los Angeles, where we had hundreds of thousands of people in the street, in August of 2020, my home was swatted. What that is there's apparently a false call made to police, and then it's meant to elicit a violent police response. Now, anybody who listened to this call, and the call is public, people can just pull it up, can hear that this is a false call. The caller actually says, the 911 operator says, why are you doing this, sir? And, he says he's holding 3 people hostage. First of all, I have 3 children plus me, that's 4 people, right? But then she says, why are you doing this, sir? And the caller, in a Southern, twangy male voice, by twangy, anybody who's from the South knows that that's usually a white Southerner, right? Says, because BLM is some effing, I don't use the R word, but he did, right? So, it would be very clear to me, were I in law enforcement, that this is meant to be a swatting call. Nonetheless, LAPD comes out, surrounds my home with assault rifles, helicopter overhead. My children and I are in the house, and I'm forced out of the house with my hands up as my children are huddled together in the back corner of the house to prevent them from being possibly killed by LAPD. So after that, we survived the incident, right? It was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life and of my children's lives. We had to be relocated for several months because there was an ongoing threat to this house. Police, this is the height of their intimidation, but it's not their only intimidation. And when we announced that we weren't going to let them just get away with this, that we were suing them, the day after we made the announcement, my home was swatted again. And then as we were protesting them in front of their police association headquarters, they swatted us for a 3rd time. So that's what we're in court suing them about. And it's absolutely about justice, or some semblance of justice for my children and me. But more than that, it's about everybody. It's about saying to LAPD that they don't get to terrorize our community, and they don't get to terrorize our organizers and our Black organizers. They don't get to point assault rifles, now that we know for certain that are loaded with slugs, which are meant to go through buildings, not just people. They don't get to do that. And so what's been really beautiful about this case, which has also trumped up a lot of emotion for me, is that I'm never in that courtroom alone. We just finished day 4. There have been dozens of folks filling the courtroom, and we intend for that courtroom to be filled every single day. I'm so, so grateful for all of the people, for the elders who come, for the young people who come, and most of all, for the families of those killed by police who've been coming and filling those seats today. The mother of David Sullivan was there. The sister in spirit of Vanessa Marquez was there. The auntie of Anthony Vargas was there. The sister of James Mincy was there. And for them to be there, the family of Sky Young has been with us. For them to be there just means everything. And I think it sends a message to the police, also to the judge, and to the court and to the entire criminal legal system that, what's the chant we say? The people united will never be defeated, that we're the people and we stand together. And, I'm named on the lawsuit. I'm the plaintiff, but this is about more than me.
Right. Well, we're going to have to continue this conversation sooner rather than later. And so we just wanted to remind our listening audience that we've been speaking with our sister, Dr. Melina Abdullah. She's the vice president running mate for presidential candidate, Dr. Cornel West, under the Justice for All party, right?
Justice for All party. You can register to vote at registertovote.ca.gov. Registertovote.ca.gov. You got to click other when it says political party preference, and then you type in Justice for All party.
Well, thank you. And we look forward to talking with you again soon back here on Freedom Now.
Thank you so much, Sister Tage.
And in closing, we'd like to thank our guest, Dr. Matsemela Odom. Please join us from May 23rd through May 25th to meet with Omali Yeshitela, chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, here with his visit to Southern California. And also thank you to Dr. Melina Abdullah. You can also join us for her court support happening next week, again at the Stanley Moss Courthouse, 3rd floor, Department 28 in downtown LA. We want to thank our producers, Dr. Gerald Horne, Sister Flora, Sister Femi, Brother Brandon, our board op Wendell, thank you Mark Maxwell, and all those who made today's program possible. Please stay tuned for our Sister Assumpta coming up next with Spotlight Africa, addressing issues facing Mother Africa. And signing off for Freedom Now, this is Sister Thage, and until next week, as always, we stand ready for revolution.